Now for some of our top stories for the week. First, Emirates Telecommunications Group will buy a $400 million stake in the super app developed by Uber Technologies Inc.'s Middle Eastern subsidiary as part of the Abu Dhabi-based firm's attempts to reinvent itself as a global technology investor. The telco giant, which is also Vodafone Group PLC's biggest investor, signed a binding agreement with Uber and its regional subsidiary Careem to acquire a 50% stake in the super app spin-out, according to a statement. Uber, which acquired Careem in 2020, will remain a shareholder in the new entity and will continue to own all of Careem's ride-hailing business. All three of Careem's co-founders will also be shareholders in the super app. The national president of Cocoa Farmers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Adeola Adegoke, has stated that poor funding still remained a major hindrance for cocoa production in the country. Adegoke maintained that many members of the association were still struggling to get access to loans to maximize opportunities in the nation's cocoa value chain. He stated in a telephone interview on this day that financing the cocoa industry has remained a challenge for a very long time, explaining that farmers involved in other related commodities have easy access to funds when compared to cocoa farmers. Speaking on the CBN's Anchor Borrower Program, Adegoke stated that the long gestation period for cocoa meant the sector is often overlooked for funding interventions. The International Monetary Fund has urged countries to avoid economic fragmentation brought on by geopolitical tensions and take measures to increase productivity, as it issued a warning that its projection for global economic growth over the next 5 years is the worst in more than 3 decades. According to the IMF's managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, during this week's World Bank and IMF spring meetings in DC, the global economy will grow by approximately 3% over the next 5 years as higher interest rates start to bite. The prediction for medium-term growth is at its lowest since 1990 and is lower than the 5-year average of 3.8% during the previous 2 decades. More competition for ChatGPT, as Alibaba Cloud on Monday unveiled Tongji Chaowen, a ChatGPT-like AI product it plans to deploy across all of the Chinese e-commerce giant's business applications in the near future. The AI model possesses both Chinese and English language capabilities and will be first integrated into DingTalk, Alibaba's workplace collaboration software, and Tmall Genie, a voice assistant smart speaker produced by Alibaba, the company said in a release. Oil multinational Shell is attempting to shield itself from scrutiny over pollution in Nigeria's oil-producing Niger Delta. Lawyers representing more than 13,000 Nigerians have argued at a London High Court, allegations which the company strongly denied. Shell denies any liability and argues that parts of the cases were brought too late. The company is asking the High Court to set an initial trial in early 2024 to decide whether parts of the case were brought too late and whether it is liable for oil spills caused by third-party interference. BMW delivered 588,000 vehicles in the first quarter of this year, down by 1.5% on the previous year, the German car maker said on Tuesday. Electric vehicle sales rose 83% year-on-year to 64,000, it added. Pieter Notte, management board member for customer, brands and sales, said the group is on track for slight sales growth in 2023, adding that growth drivers will be fully electric vehicles and models from the high-end premium segment. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Tuesday said the global outlook for the global economy was reasonably bright and pushed back against warnings by the IMF of bigger risks associated with a severe flare-up of financial tensions. Yellen stated, and I quote, "I wouldn't go overboard with the pessimism about the world economy. I believe the future is fairly promising," end of quote. Yellen also claimed that despite the possibilities, she had not seen any data pointing to a decrease in global credit. She noted that while a recession was not something she was expecting, it was still a possibility. Global consulting firm EY has scrapped plans to break up its audit and consulting businesses after months of internal disagreement and opposition from executives in the US. The Big Four firm's plan, codenamed Project Everest, would have represented the biggest shakeup to the accounting industry in more than 2 decades. EY's 18-person global leadership team, which approved the plan last September, sent partners a note yesterday saying the firm would now pursue a different deal. According to the National Statistics Office of Ghana, the country's consumer inflation decreased from 52% in February to 45% in annual terms in March. Since reaching a more than two-decade high of 54.1% in December, inflation has been slowing for 3 months in a row. In order to qualify for a $3 billion loan from the IMF, Ghana is restructuring its debt as it deals with arguably its worst economic crisis in a generation. China's exports surprisingly increased in March, with officials citing a rise in demand for electric vehicles. However, economists have cautioned that the uptick may also be the result of suppliers filing orders that were left unfilled after last year's COVID-19 problems. Exports increased 14% in March compared to the same month last year, shocking economists who had projected a 7% dip in a Reuters poll and ending a streak of 5 consecutive months of falls. Billionaire Nigerian businessman Femi Otedola has emerged as the largest single individual shareholder in Transnational Corporation plc Transcorp, a publicly traded conglomerate chaired by another billionaire businessman, Tony Elumelu. A top stockbroker at the Nigeria Exchange Group disclosed this day that Otedola now owns 2.245 billion shares, representing 5.52% of the company, according to the audited results and accounts for the period ending December 31, 2022. Elumelu, who is the chairman of Transcorp Corporation, owned 273 million issued share capital in the diversified conglomerate. Dr. Stanley Lawson, a non-executive director of Transcorp, owned 122 million direct issued share capital, while Mrs. Owen Omojiafo, the president, had 12.6 million in share capital in the diversified conglomerate. The only other shareholder with over 5% ownership of the company is UBA Nominees, which owned about 9.25% of the company as at 2022, from the reported 9.26% it owned in 2021. The governor of Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has directed that all developments on Banana Island, a highbrow middle-class residential estate in Lagos, be placed on hold, subject to a comprehensive audit by officials of the Lagos State Building Control Agency, LASBA. This is to determine how many buildings are being constructed without approval from the government and if all approved buildings are being built in line with the approval limits provided. This exercise is expected to be extended to other estates and gated communities. The directive comes in the aftermath of the collapse of a 7-story building under construction on Banana Island. The incident occurred on Wednesday, with reports of 0 fatalities as at the time this report originally came out, but 25 people were rescued from the site, with several taken to hospital for various injuries. Meanwhile, the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, LASEMA, has continued excavation work using the architectural designs. Some news reports, however, have since emerged over the course of the last 24 hours that one body has been recovered from the collapsed building. According to the minutes of the US Fed's March meeting, the turmoil following the failure of major banks will lead to a mild recession later this year. Because of this prediction, Fed policymakers expect to make fewer interest rate hikes this year due to their concern that banks will cut back on lending, which would hurt the global economy. The minutes also show that despite indications that inflation was still high, Fed members were able to agree to raise their benchmark rates by only 0.25 percentage points, as opposed to half a point. This was made possible by the uncertainty in the banking industry. Well, that's it for the market roundup and top business stories this week.